Hello everyone, my name is Daniel Alexa from Motivators Personal Training, and today is my great privilege to bring to you what has been called the 10K presentation. Now, the way that this got its name was because, having delivered it to an audience once, a gal tells me afterwards, you know, I spent 2 years getting an education and a degree in nutrition, and this 45-minute presentation was more valuable to me than my 2-year degree, of which I discovered that she had spent in the neighborhood of $10,000 $10,000 investment into said education. So, therefore, this is now the 10K presentation. Now, I haven't seen a dollar of that 10K, but I'm sure in due time. I am very excited to bring this information to you, for one, because it's something I'm incredibly passionate about. Have a fair degree of knowledge of my own, but here's the key, is that it's not my intention to just begin to dump a bunch of information on you. My goal is not to prove and show you how smart I am or how much I know or impress you with techno language. None of that is my objective. My objective is to give you clear, concise, and most important, simple information that you can and will apply to have a dramatic impact on your body, on your nutrition, and therefore on your life. If this information I present to you is confusing in any way, if you don't actually take it and do something with it, then I've failed, right? I think that's one of the more core problems of a lot of the programs that are out there. They're telling you exactly what to do, step 1, 2, 3, and that is good and helpful and needed. But I think there also needs to be some sort of education, some sort of teaching component whereby you understand why, right? It's that old phrase of teaching you how to fish, right? So if you know how to fish on your own, if you kind of understand even just the basics about nutrition, then I think this will serve you a lot better than enrolling in the next program and the next and the next. And I think that's sorely needed. And my goal, again, is to keep this as simple as possible, right? I don't want to just show you, hey, look at how much I know. It's intended to be, you really know something well when you can describe it simply. If you cannot, you probably don't know it that well. If you cannot convey it to the next person in a way that they can understand, then I really will have failed my job yet again. So, with that, let's begin. The first question I would ask myself when it comes to nutrition, and actually forget even about nutrition, I think a good starting point is to understand what it is that your body cares to do. Well, so you wonder, what does that even mean, really? I mean, what does it care to do? Well, it does have an objective. It does have an aim, right? Your body, it doesn't really care to lose weight. That's not really its objective. Your body doesn't really care to, have a lot of energy or expend a lot of energy. That's not really its intended purpose. The next idea that I explain to you in a moment here, if you can take this and understand this, this truly is the key and the gateway to understanding not only nutrition, but a lot about how your body works. The number one thing your body cares to do, its only concern, is survival, right? The body is truly magnificent in its ability to adapt in the name of furthering its survival, right? The examples are legion. So, for instance, when it is bitterly cold out, right, you shiver. The hairs on your skin begin to raise, right? Those are adaptations to the threat of the cold as far as your body is concerned. It feels the cold and says, well, whoa, 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 this is concerning to us. We can't just keep allowing our internal temperature to drop lest we die. We'll have to adapt. Let's kind of shake as such. Let's raise our hairs, both helping to increase and capture heat, keep you warmer, right? Adapting to the threat of survival that is the cold. The converse is also true. When it's very warm and very hot outside, you sweat. You release heat, right? The body's not just not going to let you overheat and die yet again, right? Again, that's its core concern, is surviving. So it releases heat. That's a physical adaptation to the stress. How about in exercise? You know, the first time that you go and you lift weights, you're terribly sore, right? The arms, right? You're kind of locked up. You know, it hurts to laugh. Your legs, forget about it. You can't even sit down. You've stressed your body. You've stressed your muscular system. And the internal dialogue the body has that says, whoa, 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 you know, this is a form of stress and threat to our survival. We need to adapt to this. Hey, let's grow more muscle fibers so that if she does this to us again, we'll be prepared for it. So it's an interesting way to think about it. The fittest person you know, someone with good muscle tone, that is the necessary adaptations that their body has taken and undergone as a result of the stress that they impose on it. Now, of course, you'd say, well, they work out a lot. Yes, of course they work out a lot. But their fit body is what yields as a result of it. So it's kind of thinking about it in reverse, right? So what does this really have to do with nutrition, you say? How do I apply this to nutrition? Well, this is the most important idea possible. The way that most people go about wanting to drop pounds and inches, right, drop body fat, is they think, let's reduce calories, right? If I eat less, I'll weigh less. And that sort of is like, you know, seems to make a lot of sense, right? It's kind of reconciled. Like, if I eat less, I weigh less. And to some extent, that's true, but only to some extent. Because oftentimes, that concept is twisted and taken to an extent that the reverse is actually happening. You're eating ever less and less and less, but your weight is totally stagnant, or even increasing. They say, man, how is this possible? What? I hardly eat anything, and yet I can't drop an ounce. What's really going on here? So I'm going to be using this chalkboard here. This is going to be as old school a presentation as you can get. All right, I'm an old school guy. Okay, so we're going to have a chalkboard. I got chalk in my pocket. We're ready to go. Okay, so your body has 12 systems to it, right? There's, you know, physiologically speaking, what makes you and I up are, the basic makeup of you and I are those 12 systems. Things like your nervous system, your circulatory system, your muscular system, your skeletal system, your endocrine system, integumentary system, I think that's the correct pronunciation, your skin. Right? That's the basic systems that make you up. These systems, they require energy in the form of food, right? So to keep them, to keep you alive and well, all of those systems need energy in the form of food. So you ask yourself, well, how much energy do they need? You see, that's the first good question to ask when it comes to nutrition, is how much energy, or food, do I need to keep myself alive and well, minimally, right? To keep my nervous system working, to keep my circulatory system working, to keep your muscular system working. The phrase for that is basal metabolic rate. Now, I may have mentioned that I wasn't going to use a lot of techno language. I promise you that's about as technical as I'll get, right? Basal metabolic rate. This is an important idea. Not to be confused with body mass index, right? Oftentimes an explanation of this, someone will say, oh yeah, that's, you know, I know my body mass index, but it's not the same thing, right? Body mass index is an indication of it's really kind of a loose metric for your body mass, just merely taking into account your height and your weight. Not always as accurate. As far as BMI is concerned, I'm obese. And a lot of people that are clearly visually not obese are considered obese, according to that scale. So we're not talking about that. We're talking about BMR, basal metabolic rate. Okay? This is an important figure. This is an important idea, right? It basically says, hey, what's the minimum amount of calories to keep you alive and well, right? So you are burning calories at all times. These are kind of like your passive calories. Whether you like it or not, you're burning calories, and I think you probably like it anyhow. So, right? If you were to lie in a bed awake for 24 hours, how many calories would you burn? That's what your BMR is, right? Because it takes calories to keep a circulatory system circulating. It takes calories to keep your nervous system processing, right? Sending the signals from your brain to throughout your body. So what's the minimum amount of calories that takes? Now, we're going to do this. We're going to draw a line here. And this will be our BMR. Right? So it's some amount, and it's really quite easy to figure out your BMR. It only takes into account three numbers. It's merely your age, your weight, and your height, right? Those three numbers, and there's any number of BMR calculators that you can access on the internet, will give you your BMR. So now let's look at, again, this is your passive calories, right? This is calories that you burn whether you like it or not. Of course, you're burning calories also as a result of everything that you do in a day, right? If you're, you work a job in construction, if you are, taking kids all to practice, and if you are, any number of things you do, you're burning calories, obviously. And the more active you are, if you're working out 2-3 times a day, the more calories that you're burning. So and those are your active calories, right? So if you take into account those passive calories from your BMR and your active calories, you arrive at, it's a mouthful, it's called your total daily energy expenditure, right? So we're going to shorten that to TDEE. Okay, that's going to be this line up here, right? And I'm just going to put this down here. This is your passive. And this is your active. All right, so your TDEE, of course, is a number higher than your BMR. So let's take a look at what happens when we consume at caloric levels that are below this, in between this, and above this, right? So let me ask you, what do you believe would happen if you were to consume an amount of calories that is in excess of all that you burn throughout a day, right? You're consuming an amount of calories in excess of all that you burn throughout a day. Okay. Try not to get confused by this. Over here. Right, I just wanted to introduce the idea. All right, so up here in this area, if you're consuming in that level, all right, here, fairly obvious that you would gain weight, right? You gain weight, okay? Now, what would happen if you are consuming less than your total daily energy expenditure? You're consuming less than you expend, right? You would lose weight, right? Of course. So right here, this area will go like this. Just to differentiate it, we're going to lose weight. All right. Now, lastly, what happens when we're down here? We're consuming an amount of calories that's less than even what's keeping us alive. What do you think happens? Now, this is something that's kind of hard to reconcile with. It's a tough pill to swallow, if you will. It's hard to understand in a lot of ways. If you consume an amount of calories that's less than your BMR, you're actually going to, at minimum, at best, you're going to maintain your weight, but more than likely you're going to gain weight. Right? So down here, is where you gain weight. So you say to yourself, how is that possible? Why? Why will you gain weight down there? Okay, So this is where we're going to tie everything in, right? We talked about your body's amazing adaptation mechanisms at play, that it's constantly adapting to stress, right? So as far as the body is concerned, when you're consuming at a level that's even less than the minimum amount which keeps it alive, it says, whoa, this is a very, very stressful environment for us. This is something that we need to adapt to so that we don't die, right? It's not getting the minimum amount of calories to keep it alive and well. So what is its adaptation? What happens? Well, it kind of begins to suppress itself. Remember those 12 bodily systems that we talked about? So let's see what happens when each of those is suppressed, at least for 2 or 3, right? So a nervous system suppressed might mean that you get headaches rather frequently, or perhaps you can't sleep at night. A immune system suppressed might mean that you get sick very often, or that you can't recover when you are sick. A muscular system suppressed might mean that you're horribly, terribly sore after a workout, and you can't possibly make progress in your workouts, in your strength, all because the body is adapting, because all of that stuff, like building more muscle, is kind of like surplus activity. The thing that the body is willing to do only after its minimum needs have been tended to. But in this environment, the minimum needs have not been tended to. You can forget about building muscle. As you know, the term healthy is a pretty wide brush, right? You could be, mental health, emotional health, physical health. When I hear healthy, the first thing that I think of is a metabolism, right, that is well nourished, right? A metabolism that works efficiently, a nervous system, an immune system, a muscular system, a skeletal system, a reproductive system that is operating at peak efficiency. Now, in terms of those systems that are suppressed, let's talk about that very reproductive system suppressed, right? What does that mean? Not too much fun for the spouse, right? Because the libido is in the tank, okay? It's a real problem, right? You're not doing yourself any favors, and you can forget about any sort of weight loss that might come as a result, right? Because the body says to itself, well, boy, wow, there's really not enough food coming in. There's not enough energy to fuel our basic needs. Hey, here's some stored energy. Let's hold on to that. My friend, do you know what stored energy is on the body? Do you know where we find stored energy? It's in body fat, right? That's all body fat is. It's stored energy. It can be called upon under the right conditions, but not eating enough is very much not the right conditions. So the body is now in a place where it is storing body fat, right? Here's an example, an analogy I want you to think about. What would happen, what would be your sort of knee-jerk instinctual reactions if you were to get a pay cut at work, right? You'd probably be contractionary. You don't take that vacation. You don't go out to that dinner. You save, you conserve, right? You're contracting in ways. You got a pay cut. It's kind of stressful, isn't it? Well, that's what the body does, right? It conserves, it saves its stores of energy, its body fat. Now, let's say the reverse is true. You get a bonus at work, okay? Now what happens? You go in sort of a bit of an expansionary state, right? You do take that vacation. You do go out to that restaurant, okay? You're not, your basic survival is not threatened, right? Well, that's the same thing here, right? The body would be willing to relinquish some of its stores of body fat under those conditions. It has no problem under those conditions. It's not threatened. But that's all that's really happening when you're consuming very little amounts like that, okay? So that's a massively important idea, because I want you to think about something, right? Let's suppose that we have 2 people. They're both you, by the way. not so happy. This one's kind of happy, and I'll tell you why. Right? So a person on the left maintains their body weight at, let's suppose, 1,200 calories. Right? They're merely maintaining their body weight at 1,200 calorie intake. Where the person on the right maintains their body weight at 2,000 calories. Okay? Now these are the exact same people, the exact same workout schedule, energy expenditure, the exact same in every way. One maintains at 1,200, the other maintains at 2,000. Both now go on a mission to drop body fat. Who do you think is going to have an easier time dropping body fat between those two people? Person A at 1,200 or person B at 2,000? Right? So of course the answer is person B. Right? This person over here, they have a lot more of a buffer from which to reduce from. Right? Their metabolism is pretty healthy. They're a much healthier person. They're eating more, fueling themselves, and maintaining their body fat. So now, when person B goes to reduce body fat, there's a little bit of a buffer there. They can go down to 1,600 calories, 1,400 calories. Where is person A going to go? They're consuming 1,200. Where's she going to go? Is she going to eat seeds and leaves and that's it? You know, I mean, you got to ask yourself some basic questions. If you're at a place where you're consuming already very, very little amounts of food and expending high amounts of energy, maybe you're doing cardio, 2-3 times a week and other forms of exercises, and you're not dropping body fat, well, there's a phrase for that, and dare I say, brace yourself. But the metabolism will begin to adapt, right? And in this instance, this is a maladapted metabolism, right? This is metabolic damage, as it were, right? It can be undone, but for all intents and purposes, this is a lot healthier person. This person sleeps a lot better, doesn't get sick as often, can have a lot better results from their fitness. See, here's the challenge then with nutrition plans. It's like it doesn't care or ask or think about any of this stuff, right? What it does instead is, I'm just going to kind of put it down here, there's a couple of ways to think about nutrition, I suppose. You can look at the quality of food, or you can look at the quantity of it. Right? And most programs just stay here, right? Here, eat this better quality of food. Those questions that they ask are like, hey, what's better, whole milk or skim? White bread or wheat? This protein or that? This carb or that? It's all quality questions, right? But here's the rub. You see, if you could be, this could be your day of food where you wake up and you have egg white omelet, and then for lunch, a kale salad, and then for dinner, 2 ounces of wild-caught sockeye salmon with coconut oil, right? Superfoods galore. But if you're only having 800 calories, you're down here, then I don't give a damn how good those foods are. You're not that healthy, okay? That's tricky. I get it. And that's why having conversations with clients, it's always like, it's a lot of like cognitive dissonance. When I eat healthy, I eat vegetables. I know. But you got to ask the right questions first. And the right question first is not quality, it's quantity. Because here's something funny. That you could take somebody who's on the opposite side, who here's their day of food. They wake up and they go to all-you-can-eat pancakes. And then for lunch, it's Buffalo Wild Wings. And then it's for dinner, it's more fast food and soda. And their quality obviously sucks. But if their quantity, and they did this on a consistent basis, was somewhat near a level that's in here or even here, well, hell, that person's going to have a much easier time metabolically speaking, they're actually a little bit healthier. And here's what's funny, because that person probably knows that their food quality sucks. So it's kind of, that's like an easy change. Like, all right, let's make some obvious changes to the quality of food. But the person who is hell-bent on the quality of food that they eat, but they're not eating enough, that's kind of like a psychological barrier that you have to navigate. A bit of an obstacle that's harder to overcome, because there's a lot of psychological resistance. It's like, oh, I want to eat very little and very little. You've been told to eat very little and very little, 1,200 calories. I don't know in 10 years of doing this that I've met a client who should be consuming 1,200 calories, just to let you know. Most usually is, 1,400 and up. So here's what I would strongly advise that you do is first get a handle on your BMR, right? The first question when I sit down with clients and they tell me, well, I think the reason that I'm, holding on to body fat and gaining weight is, I have some of my kids' snacks and I put creamer in my coffee. And I will follow up and I'll say, hey, do you know what your BMR is? Say no. All right, do you know how many calories you consume in a day? No. Okay. I think you're missing the big idea, right? It's easy and tempting to just want to look at the quality of food and say, hey, I just got to make better choices here. But I promise you, friend, you got to, more than likely, 99 times out of 100, you probably have to eat more, right? If your day consists of a lot of little stuff but no meals, right? If it's like, a snack bar in the morning, a light salad for lunch, and then like a little nosh for dinner, like that's just not going to cut it, right? Especially if you're working out. Man, talk about an energy expenditure that's much higher. I mean, if you're going to fuel this level of activity, right, it's probably a good way to think of it. You want to fuel for the activity that's in front of you. Yes, Michael Phelps, it's been said that when he's in training season, that he consumes some 7,000 calories in a day, right? But look at the opposite side of the coin. Look what he's doing. He's swimming from 6 a.m. till 6 p.m., right? He needs every bit of those 7,000 calories, right? But if he were to stop swimming and he was not in training and he's consuming 7,000 calories, he's going to have a real problem on his hands, right? Look, I'll give you one last diagram. I'm going to use this. I know we're running out of room here, but it's a useful one, right? So, it's another way to think about nutrition, okay? So, there's a bit of a hierarchy of which I can think of 5 pieces of the puzzle that you can tend to, that kind of keep it simple, that shouldn't overwhelm you, that you kind of want to go in sequence. Like, tend to this first, right? There's a bottom rung. You can probably guess by now that calories, right? What's the total amount of calories that you should be consuming? You, independent of your friend and your sister and your cousin and your coworker. Because those people are not you. They don't have, from body composition to energy levels and expenditure and and a number of other variables to consider. They're not you, so it should be independent. So that's my beef with nutrition programs that just are wide blanket. Here, go do this. No individual difference is accounted for. So the bottom rung is calories. There's not much more to talk about if you don't tend to this first, right? After that, let's suppose you should be having some, 1,600 calories in a day. Of course, I'm thinking of a food in mind that has 160 calories. Hey, are you saying I could have 10 of these? Right? If calories are all that matter, I have this 160 calorie food, I'll just have 10 of them. Well, the 160 calorie food is not actually food, it's a drink. It's a 12-ounce thing of Pepsi. Can you have 10 of those and stay in great shape? Well, of course, that's absurd. And if you're willing to admit and see quite clearly how absurd that is, then you'd say, well, the next thing that matters are what I call macronutrients. I'm going to short it to macros, right? Fats, proteins, and carbs. Some percentage allocation for your body, right? Those two things right there are the heavy hitters. The next three, you know, they matter, but I mean, literally 99 people out of 100 don't know this, and they sure as hell don't know that. But this, my friend, when you get this stuff down, the rest you can pretty much ignore. I evaluate every nutrition, from gimmick to real thing, on the basis of how many calories does it first ask you to eat, right? And there's a lot of silly stuff out there. Cabbage soup diets and ketos and Atkins and paleo and Mediterranean, and a lot of them are just, you know, just get a bit of a facelift and called something, you know, packaged a little bit differently. Intermittent fasting is another funny one people get excited about. You ask yourself these questions first, right? There's a lot of ways to just kind of twist and shape and, oh, well, you're not going to eat after 7 p.m. and you do all these little tricks. But tend to these two things first. Go discover your BMR. Find out what's the minimum amount of calories that keeps you alive, and then take it from there. Because if you're not, you're just spinning your wheels. You're going to be in the same place. If you're starting a program that doesn't tend to that, you're going to be in the same place and probably worse off in 6 months or 12 months than you are now. And it's hard for me to believe, in all the people that I've sat down and helped and coached nutrition, that any of them are really looking for quick fixes and not honest solutions. And it's for this reason that I spend a lot of time teaching and instructing and saying, hey, let's get down to the base level of education that you need to make informed choices, not for the next 6 months, and not even for the next 6 years, but for a lifetime. That, my friend, is a 10K presentation. Listen, if you are in need of nutrition coaching and nutrition assistance, then I would strongly advise you to head on over to motivatorspt.com/nutritionignition. Right? We have a thorough program that tends to all of this. Look, there are a lot of things that you could do on your own, right? You could take this and kind of work with the numbers, and there'll be a bit of a learning curve and whatnot. If you are looking to get from where you are to where you want to be in a straight line as fast as possible, then I would advise you let us help coach you through that. Right? That's exactly what our Nutrition Ignition program does. So you go to motivatorspt.com/nutritionignition and check out and see if it's a good fit for you. So until then, I hope this has been valuable to you. I hope that the first thing that you do is go to a BMR calculator, so that when we have a conversation and I say, hey, what's your BMR?